So the title of my talk is Positive and Negative Effects of Different Types of In-Store Promotions on the Perception of the Brand Image, or Exploring the Emotional Relationship Between Consumers and Brands. So I'm going to talk about that relationship, and then I'm going to work through 3 case studies in in-store promotions. Well, two are in-store promotions and one is a digital promotion. Okay, so I'm dividing my talk into 4 parts. I'm going to look at the relationship between the non-conscious and the conscious. One thing that's always puzzled me when I was a first neuromarketer and we talk about System 1 and System 2, therein lies a kind of a contradiction. You've got this System 2 that you cannot introspect into. It drives your behavior. Sorry, System 1. System 2 is the conscious part. But how do they, if System 2 can't contact System 1, how do they communicate? It seems to be contradictory. If they are 2 separate systems, how do they communicate? So we'll look at that. Sorry. And then part 2 is emotion. I want to advance the idea that emotion is not just fight or flight. It's not just a reaction to things. That people actually use emotion in their social interactions. Okay. And then the third part is the case studies I'll go through, and then finally an epilogue, a conclusion. So part 1, the relationship between the conscious and the non-conscious. So as we've argued, you have the non-conscious. And just a word on terminology here. You'll see in the literature non-conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. I actually prefer the term subconscious because it's kind of below conscious. It's subconscious. But the problem with that, of course, is that Freud used that term. So if you use the word subconscious, everybody thinks you're a Freudian, which neuromarketers are not Freudians, okay. So non-conscious has become, it's a very boring title. It's not something rather than actually be something. So there you go. So this non-conscious system, and I'm going to use the analogy of the non-conscious part of the brain being a statistical. Okay, I've just had a discussion with Alistair earlier. We kind of trying to avoid this mechanistic view, but it's a statistical computer, if you like. It's a human brain that does computations that we don't know anything consciously about. I'm doing all sorts of computations, trying to formulate sentences, trying to keep an eye on the time, trying to not fall over. My brain is making all sorts of computations as I deliver this talk, and you too as you listen. And I'm not conscious of them. I cannot introspect and examine them. That's one reason why we have psychologists, because we can't know how we recognize faces. We can generate a hypothesis, how we recognize faces, how we recognize speech. So we need psychology that helps us to identify what's going on in this non-conscious system. So the obvious example is a skill. A tennis player, professional tennis player, isn't thinking, I've got to calculate a 35-degree angle here and I've got to give 10 newtons to my... No, it's a top-down command, lob. It's a top-down command that says, do a disguised shot. Make them think you're going to hit it over there, but you're not, you're going to hit it over there. It's a top-down command. He's a professional expert in his field, but he cannot tell you what's going on in the non-conscious system. It's a fascinating thing to be a human. Balancing is a really incredibly difficult thing to do, particularly if you are trying to tightrope between 2 very tall buildings. So I'm arguing that would be System 1 and conscious part would be System 2. How does the non-conscious actually communicate to System 1? And looking at the literature, this is not just my theory, this is the theory of many, many psychologists. And I'm just trying to sort of put it into one sort of model, that it communicates through intuition, something we might call it's a very, very big, gross term called intuition. It communicates through feelings, through those cognitive, what people call cognitive markers. It's a non-linguistic, inherently non-linguistic mode of communication. Mostly feelings. And it lets you know whether if you're in the stock market, and next, buy, sell, you see the market conditions, and intuitively, they know whether to buy or whether to sell. Similarly, we all look at houses and accommodation. When we go to buy a house, we might think we've got a paper here, there's the pros, these are the cons, these are the pros, yeah, but wasn't that kitchen spooky? You get negative feelings about something, and it influences your decision. So you get that spookiness feeling from your non-conscious that's kind of detecting patterns in the environment and learning about patterns. The racing car driver who goes around a circuit, and every time he goes past the stand, everybody cheers and cheers and cheers. And then one time he goes around the stand, and everyone is silent, not cheering. Instantly he knows, round the bend, something has happened. In 0.25 seconds, faster than Google, he can recognize something is not quite right, so he slows down to avoid an accident. And then point of sale, where marketers and brands try to exploit this impulsive, intuitive nature. I've got all the shopping I need, but hey, look, there's a bar of chocolate waving at me, saying, take me, buy me. Okay, and then of course is our conscious system, and this is the system that every human is familiar with, so I don't really need to describe our conscious system. Other than that, you can generate ideas, and you can think about, and you can plan ahead consciously. And the unconscious communicates through intuition, but also directly. So who's that? Trump. It's actually a Trump lookalike. So your brain instantly recognized features of Donald Trump there, but it wasn't in fact Donald Trump, because that's Donald Trump. Everyone likes talking about Donald Trump. We all love him, really, don't we? Bottles, which can you recognize the brands? Recognize the brands. Your non-conscious system has done lots of computations and instantly says Coca-Cola, Fanta, 7-Up, Sprite. Then the clear one is Sprite Zero. So it's instantly recognized. And how did you arrive at that? The result? It's difficult to explain, isn't it? It's difficult to put in words. It just arises. Now this is another something I thought was of interest. So I'll read it out to you. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and the last letter be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. So I don't know if at the back you can see that, but it's all jumbled up, but you can still read it. It's incredible. Now, I couldn't have introspected to know that that's what we can do. Somebody needs to run an experiment, and they find out that's what we can do. So they say, I know how people read. They don't read. They read more holistically. They don't look at all the letters and put them into place and interpret them. So reading is something we do very, very automatically. Skilled adult readers it's an incredible ability. You can flash a word very, very briefly on a screen, and the brain will process the meaning of that word. Not just read the word, but process it for meaning, even if it's just flashed. It's something, there are the Stroop test. You must have all heard of the Stroop test. The Stroop test proves and demonstrates that reading is an involuntary thing. You cannot avoid reading a word when it's presented on the screen. It's very, very difficult to avoid reading a word when it's presented on a screen. And there's this rumination going on there at the top, which is we all ruminate. How is System 1 communicating with System 2? Okay, so that's me there, when I had hair. Okay, so our conscious things, like we express consciously, so we might express gender bias, a woman, fire engine person thingy. That's not right. And then we negotiate, so we use our conscious system. So that's a kind of a model that I think is a plausible model of the relationship between what people call System 1 and System 2. So maybe System 1, System 1.5, and System 2. Okay, so then how do we make decisions? Using all of those systems, the System 1, System 1.5, and System 2, how do we make a decision about choosing when we see this on the shelf? Do we think, right, I want to choose the Diet Coke. I like Coca-Cola, but I don't like the sugar content. Okay, so if you didn't like the sugar content, why didn't you choose Sprite Zero? And you might think, well, because I like Coke. Or is it because you like the associations with Coca-Cola? You want to be seen with Coca-Cola. It's more trendy to be seen drinking a bottle of Coca-Cola than it is drinking a Sprite. So there are all sort of brands associations that may be affecting you subconsciously. So when you think you're making a rational decision, as we often think we do when we're shopping, there are a lot of these effects that are going on subconsciously that you may be unaware of. Right, and the second point I wanted to make here is that emotion is not just a response. It's more than flight or fight. Fight or flight. Every student of psychology, and I've done this myself, you teach students about the fight or flight, and you teach them about basic emotional reactions. When you go through theories of emotion, that's what it's all about. It's all about fight or flight, and it always focuses on the caveman. The caveman is really important here. I'm not trying to say that the caveman is not, shouldn't be our focus of attention, but it always tends to be limited to the caveman. The caveman is in a situation where he sees something dangerous, threatening, a bear, a tiger, and he has to make an instant decision: do I fight this thing or do I run away? Now, evolutionarily, what has happened is our systems have developed. Those organisms that were able to develop this immediate reaction were more likely to survive. And that reaction is you have your digestive system. Fabio would know much more about this than I do. Your digestive system ceases. The blood gets pumped into your muscles, your heart rate increases, your breathing rate increases. Your body is preparing physically for a fight or a flight. And of course, the problem with that is that you kind of overgeneralize this model. So Fabio also talked about the logical error, which I understand is called modus ponens, okay? Which is, if you're in that situation, you're seeing an angry grizzly bear, and you go into a flight or fight mode, it doesn't necessarily follow that if you are in a fight or flight mode, you're fearing some kind of angry bear. Okay, so when somebody is anxious, they are not always necessarily in a fight or flight mode. That model cannot always explain every kinds of anxiety. It's only one possible account of anxiety. So I want to advance the notion that emotion is more about approach and withdrawal. Approach and withdrawal does occur. Of course it does occur. And fMRI tests can identify that. But in the world of implicit reaction time tests, you can go broader than that. You can ask why. If somebody is attracted to something, why are they attracted to it? I prefer a social cognitive model of emotion, which is that emotion hasn't just evolved to deal with bears. Emotion has evolved to deal with other humans. It's to deal with other humans. Everybody wants to try to influence other people. I'm trying to influence you now. Okay, in our social interactions, we try to influence each other, and we detect that other people are trying to influence us. So emotion isn't something you just react to or respond to. You use emotion in your social interactions. Okay, it's a key point that you use it. You don't just react. So, for example, embarrassment, guilt, shame, pride, social anxiety, jealousy, envy, remorse, warmth, compassion, trust. The list could go on. These aren't fight, flight. These aren't basic emotions. These are quite sophisticated emotions that reside from social interaction and social engagement. Of course, there is a physiological concomitant, and there is somebody called Stephen Porg who looks at these very, very subtle and sophisticated social emotions that we have and relating them to a whole array of parasympathetic responses or activity. Trying to get away from the word response. Parasympathetic activity.
We met in school.
Okay, so I've kind of hit that a bit early. I need to say what the next video is about. The next video is, I searched on YouTube trying to find a social interaction. Two people interacting with each other. And I came across this video that went viral. I'm showing you two clips from this video. It's about 20 minutes long, but this clip is only up to about 2 minutes long. I've taken the best bits out of it. And it's two couples, two ex-partners, meeting together in front of cameras, and they're describing their relationship and how it was broken, how it became broken relationship. Okay, so here we are.
We met in school. We met in college. We met in class, and you really didn't like me.
No, I didn't like you at first.
A couple years later, we moved into like the same apartment complex, and the first day we both moved there, we like met on the elevator again. It was like a reunion.
And then you offered to bring my groceries upstairs.
And yeah, we spent a lot of time together.
Like, every day.
I would say that you were my best friend.
Yeah. Me too. I would go through his phone, and I would like see text messages or like pictures of girls, and then I would ask him about it.
Okay, then clip 2.
It had more to do with me just not being able to commit.
Why not?
Because at the time, I didn't want to. I think just sometimes we're not on the same page.
Yeah. I think that's true.
There's nothing that you could have done differently that I think would have prevented it. I think that you did everything that you needed to do to be a good girlfriend, and I was lucky to have someone like you.
I don't think you're a bad guy because he cheated. I forgave you.
Why?
Because you're my best friend.
Okay, so there's something, having watched that video many, many times now, I can see what's going on here, the dynamic that's going on. The guy, she's just reacting to what the guy is saying, really. He is trying to convince her through emotion and the absence of emotion, because he appears really cold at times, trying to convince her of how she should be interpreting what's happened, which I think quite amazing, really. And that's an example of how in interaction, quite an intense interaction there, of course, how we use emotion in our everyday lives. So I thought at the time, I wonder if I could somehow, I could rework that sketch and sort of illustrate how people can have emotional relationships with a brand. So, at no expense spared, I've created a parody of this, and the same guy, is talking to a tin of beans, and he's talking about his relationship he has with a tin of beans. So, and I have to apologize to my American friends here, because I've put on this really phony American accent, so this is going to be really embarrassing, so here we go. We met at home at my parents'. I didn't like you at first. But after a few years later, when I was at college, we met again in Tesco. It was like a reunion. I took you home with me and we had dinner. I fell in love with you right then. Over the next weeks and months, we spent a lot of time together, like every day. You were like my best friend. You would send me emails asking me if I was interested in various kinds of offers. But after a while, I got interested in other beans, like Branston's,
Tesco everyday value baked beans. And one time with Marks and Spencer's baked beans with pork sausages. It had more to do with me, not just being able to commit, because I really didn't want to. I think that sometimes we're just not on the same page. There's nothing you could have done differently that would have prevented it. I think you did everything you needed to be a good, wholesome meal with enriched fiber. But at the end of the day, we were just friends.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. As you see, the no expense spared production there from me, Dr. Implicit, is my Twitter handle. Okay. So, is that really true? Is that really plausible? Is that dumb? The idea that people can have relationships with brands. Brands we know deliver functional, and they deliver emotional rewards, and they deliver benefits. But here's a list of terms that we could say that this is how we do feel about brands. Brands can make us feel hopeful, contented, belonging. We can get a sense of reward from brands. We can feel nostalgic with brands. They can be visually pleasing, and we can feel energized from brands. They give us optimistic. We can have fun with them. They can save you time, and sometimes they can waste your time. And they can make you feel satisfied, connected. They can have the feeling that you've saved money, and so on. So that's what we're arguing, is that it's not just the basic emotions that people associate with brands. There's a whole array of emotions that you might associate with human-to-human interaction. So maybe we talk about human-to-brand interaction.